Imagine this scenario. It's 211 BC and you have been elected to be the commander of the Roman army. The decisions you make are now going to impact thousands of people and determine whether you are a success or a failure. So how are you going to make these decisions, and how are you going to cope with the pressure? And how can this new decision-making grid that you've never seen before help you out not just in this scenario but in your day-to-day life? Before we get into that, I want to thank my company sponsoring this video, Time Theory. If you procrastinate, you want to stop procrastinating and use your time wisely in 42 days, then click the first link in the description, which is going to take you to an unlisted YouTube video, which is going to show you exactly how you can do that. Now imagine this. The first day that you're elected, you're having your dinner, and as soon as you finish, a messenger walks in, and the message is from the Senate. It comes on a piece of parchment. You slowly unravel it, and inside of it contains your first instruction as the new commander. It reads, "Kill Hannibal." Hannibal is the Carthaginian who has trekked across North Africa, all of South Europe, and even over the Alps with 37 elephants, and is now attacking Italy. And if he destroys Italy, what's next? It's Rome. On your first day, you've been thrown into the deep end and a massive problem sits in front of you. You drop the parchment and it slowly drops until the ground. This is your first day, and if you don't make the correct decisions, Rome is gone. You will be remembered as a failure. Whereas if you make the correct decisions, you are going to be remembered as a hero. You decide to go on a walk to let this problem sit inside of your brain. And as you're walking through a vineyard, you see an old man picking the grapes. Now this man looks incredibly wise, and as you make eye contact, you walk up to him and you ask him, "How on earth can I kill Hannibal?" The old man looks back at you, shocked. His eyes widen and he asks you, "Why on earth would you want to fight Hannibal? Why would you want to kill Hannibal?" You respond to him immediately, "Well, Hannibal is attacking us. I must kill Hannibal as I was instructed so that I can end the war." The old man pauses for a few seconds. His brain is really thinking. And then he leans in and he whispers to you, "If you want to end the war, you must not kill Hannibal. You must destroy Carthage." You walk away from this conversation feeling a little bit confused. The instructions given to you were very clear. They contained only 2 words, "Kill Hannibal." Yet this wise old man who had such knowledge and wisdom was recommending not to follow those instructions. As you continue your walk, you remember the tail of the Hydra. If you cut off one of its necks, 2 more grow back. This was a vicious creature. The only way you could truly remove it is if you get to its heart. And you recognize that this is exactly what's happening with the situation that you're in. Killing Hannibal isn't going to solve any of the problems. It's going to be incredibly difficult to kill Hannibal, and it may only make their army stronger. The purpose is to end the war. You must go for the heart. You must destroy Carthage. Albert Einstein said that if you gave him an hour to solve a problem, he's going to spend the first 55 minutes solving the problem. And the first lesson we can get from this is to never let anybody else define the problem that we're in. As we go about our day-to-day life, it's so easy to focus all of our time and energy on solving problems that aren't really problems, simply because other people have defined those problems for us. We must always define the problems we're trying to solve ourselves. And as you're on your walk, you contemplate a story that your father had told you, where he went to a Roman colony because all of the citizens were getting sick. And the citizens believed that they were getting sick because there was blood contaminating their water from the river that they took water from. Now, when your father went to this village, the citizens asked him, "Please, can you help us filter the water? Please, can you help us get clean water? We must understand how we can stop getting sick." But instead of going and filtering the water like the Roman colonies had asked your father to do, your father simply wandered upstream, found a goat carcass further upstream, removed the goat carcass, and straight away the water became clean. Because your father never let anybody else define his problems, he was able to remove the root cause of the problem every single time. As you go to sleep, you redefine the problem to ending the war. And as you wake up in the morning feeling slightly anxious, you recognize that today is the day that you've got to come up with your grand plan. Today is the day you've got to make your first decision. And there are two options that you can take. First, you recognize that the bulk of the Carthaginian army is located in Spain and is run by Hannibal's brothers. Option 1, you could take the battle there. You could fight them in Spain and cut off Hannibal and fight everybody individually. Or the second option you can take, you can go straight to Carthage. You can rush Carthage and ignore Hannibal altogether, fight back his home instead of going towards them. And this decision is clearly a consequential, important decision. If you make the correct decision, you'll go down in Rome's history books. If you make the wrong decision, there won't be any history of Rome. You spend hours pacing, contemplating how on earth can you solve this problem. And as you're pacing, your wife walks in and she asks you, which of these two dresses should I wear for dinner tonight? Immediately you respond, wear the right one. She walks out and she knows which one she's going to wear. As she walks out, you start to contemplate, why is this Carthage decision so difficult to make? Yet picking my wife's dress is simple. That's when you realize that the two decisions are different in that one is consequential and the other is inconsequential. And as you reflect some more, you recognize that as well as being inconsequential, although you shouldn't tell her that, the wife's decision is also reversible. If she changes her mind, she can simply change her dress back. The decision you have to make at war with Hannibal is both consequential and irreversible. These are the most difficult, but yet the most important decisions to make. And as you learn these two lessons, a quadrant starts to form in your mind. Consequential, inconsequential, reversible and irreversible. And how you treat each of these quadrants is completely different. So let's look at these consequential and irreversible decisions. Jeff Bezos focuses on these entirely, and he says that these are a little bit like a one-way door. Once you go through the door, you can't go back. A great example of a consequential and irreversible decision that I made was going towards university. I made that decision far too quickly than I should have done, and once I was there and recognized it wasn't for me and recognized that it was nowhere near the standard of education that I thought it was going to be, I couldn't go back. The time was wasted and the money I'd spent couldn't get returned. There's no refund policy on university. And these kinds of decisions require a lot of time, a lot of careful thinking and a lot of careful planning. These are the decisions that completely shape your future. If you're walking through a one-way door, you've got to try as best as you can to keep one foot in the door and really try and break down the problem into a lot of smaller problems that you can identify and answer these questions individually. For example, my university problem. I should have snuck onto campus and gone to a few lectures, or I should have spoken with ex-students of the modules that I was going to be taking to understand what they were getting and where they were now and whether it was all worth it for them. If I had applied that kind of decision making, I imagine there would have been a different outcome to the one that I took. Therefore, you've identified that Spain is a consequential and irreversible decision, so you start to break it down into the smaller parts. Could you take Spain? Could you take Carthage? In which area do we have a higher troop elevation advantage? Which one is far more likely to be effective? You spend the next few days researching Carthaginian warfare and strategy in order to better make a decision. But all the while this is happening, Hannibal is walking around in Italy uncontested. Soon he is going to be on Rome's doorstep, so you start to panic. Your time is running out, you don't have all too long. If you don't make a decision quickly, there's going to be no decision left for you to make. So how do you know when to stop researching? How do you know when you should just make a decision? So you make a list of all of these sub-decisions, and you're really pondering each of them, trying to figure out when should you make a decision. And as you're doing that, your son walks in. And he asks you, would you like wine with your dinner? Immediately you think, I've got bigger problems to be solving, I don't care, you reply to him. As he walks out, you commit to letting everybody around you know that you shall not be disturbed if there's an inconsequential or a reversible decision. You have important things to be focusing on. And this lesson shows us how quickly we should be making decisions. You should make reversible decisions as quickly as you humanly can. You should try and not let that eat up your time or your thought space. You've just got to make the decision. Nowadays, our lives are so busy that we just don't have time to be focusing on inconsequential decisions, or even consequential and reversible decisions. If it's important and you make the wrong decision, you can just change it back. We've got to stay incredibly focused on irreversible and consequential decisions. That's where our money and that's where our time should go towards. When I was contemplating university, I probably spent more time thinking about buying a pair of shoes, and that's ridiculous. Both, this is an inconsequential decision and it's a reversible decision. If I didn't like the shoes, I could simply return them. So we've got to free up our plate so we can focus on what's important. So there are two principles that we can take away in order to figure out how long we should spend on a problem. We either make a decision ASAP or ALAP, either as soon as possible or as late as possible. If the problem is consequential and it's irreversible, we should make the decision as late as possible. We should use that time to collect information. Perhaps if we make the decision immediately, a new piece of information will come up that would change the decision that we make. And we should only make these important decisions when either one of two things happens. Either, first of all, the more time you spend on the problem, you're not collecting any new information. You're repeating the same things again and again. That's safe to say that now is the time to make the decision. You've collected all the information that you can. Or second of all, if there's a deadline or you start to see the opportunity slipping away, this shows that you should make the decision again. Apart from that, you make the decision as late as possible. And taking all of this into mind as you're pondering your decision, you start to think back to the days where you were a Roman soldier, and you remember that one time that you were operating a ballista, and there was a troop coming towards you, yet you had only one bolt. If you missed, you would get killed. You had to hit this one bolt. You had one opportunity. And as you were in a state of panic, you watched as your friend picked up a bow and arrow, shot it towards the enemy troop. The wind came and blew the arrow and swerved it to the left, missing ever so slightly. You're wondering, why on earth are you doing this? We have a bolt in our ballista that we should be using. Then your friend turns to the ballista, aims it towards the person, then aims it slightly right, and then he shoots, recognizing that the wind was going to blow the bolt straight into the opposition. He fired the ballista, and sure enough, it hit. You remember that you can make irreversible decisions reversible by testing them at a smaller scale. Your friend shot the bow and arrow, tested the wind, then put in the irreversible decision, shot it, and it worked. So remember, shoot arrows first, and then you shoot your bolt. And at this point, you are incredibly close to making your decision. You've gathered all the evidence, you've broken it down and answered the sub-questions. You recognize how to deal with reversible and irreversible decisions, and consequential and inconsequential decisions. You're focusing all of your energy on irreversible and consequential decisions. But then you start to doubt the decision that you're going to make, because you've heard many a philosopher talk about the biases and the heuristics of men, and how men can easily delude themselves into thinking that they're right when in reality they're wrong. You start to worry that because of the fear of death and all of this pressure that's on you, you worry you're going to start acting irrationally. How on earth can we act rational when as human beings we are irrational? You start to doubt yourself, you start to worry, but then you start to recognize that one of the quickest ways to overcome all of these heuristics is to stop viewing the decision you're making in first person and switch to third person. When you switch to third person, the decision is no longer emotional, it's simply like you were advising a friend. So you start to think, what should Rome do? Not what should I do, but what should somebody in my shoes do? What would be the wise thing to do? And immediately, that clears all of the biases that you're thinking. That allows you to think rationally and unemotionally and identify which decision is the best decision to make. And eventually, you decide to take the battle to Spain. You decide you're going to go attack Spain, cut off Hannibal, remove his supplies, and then you'll be able to attack and win and defend Rome. And funnily enough, this was the same decision that Scipio made in 202 BC to protect Rome in the Battle of Zama, and that decision led to him destroying Hannibal and protecting Rome. So the key takeaways that we can get from all of this is to sort problems into reversible and irreversible problems and consequential and inconsequential decisions, and focus solely on consequential and irreversible decisions and ignore the rest. And we should break down these larger problems into smaller problems and try and test the smaller problems before we fully commit. And avoid all heuristics by making decisions from a third-party point of view. This is going to allow you to make effective decisions on a day-to-day basis, and this is how Jeff Bezos would run if he was a Roman emperor. If you've enjoyed this video, you're also going to enjoy this other video which is on screen right now, and click subscribe if you're new and you want to help make better decisions and improve your life on a day-to-day basis. I'll see you in that video that's on screen right now. Thank you for watching.